to start with public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We don't.
No public comment. Is anyone here or to? No. Fantastic. So, did you all have an opportunity to review the minutes from the last
Yes.
meeting? No. Okay, so,
Yep.
Okay, minutes approved from the September 2nd work session. And then we will move on to our discussion items. So we have our excellent HR, basically the whole team here. To share a number of pieces, and we're gonna start with hiring updates.
Yeah, so we have, and Daryl will take us through that in just a second. We're gonna go through our. How about now? How about now? How about now?
Should you got them Zoom call too?
Oh, yeah. All right, so we have, and the slides will go up in a minute, but we have a slide deck prepared. We'll go over hiring. Teachers, so there is a churn. In terms of like special education, that is a continuous recruitment area. What our current situation is, and it has been for the last several years, is oftentimes special education teachers take on what we call an overage. There's a lot of special education teachers, particularly at secondary level, that will take essentially extra classes or extra caseloads. And that's how we balance out a lot of those numbers. But we all recognize that that's not ideal, but that's how we feel that. And similarly, that's the same with some of our science and math positions as well. Other things to note, these also are dynamic, right? Because there's definitely needs that we have and want to fill, and we're continuously recruiting. But right now we are able to staff our classes. There's no classes where students show up and there's not a teacher. But in a perfect world, we wouldn't have those things.
I just had a question about the school psychologist line, only that just like looks like almost 4 out of 14 positions open. I was just wondering, are you trying to add positions and that's why we have vacancies, or are we like down core school psychologists, and then what's the impact of that?
Yeah, good question. So we are down, and so for some of these RSPs, related service providers, we contract out with other agencies to get the services. So ideally we would have those psychologists on staff, as part of our ITA members, part of our unit in our buildings, part of the community. And instead what we do is we contract out for different services to meet the special education needs.
So like what's in it? Like if you contract out a school psychologist, is it like a clinical psychologist in the community, or like who would it be that would come and take that role?
I mean, it'd be a range. It could be, in theory, it could be that. There's also staffing agencies that facilitate that. They find people with specific certifications. There's also companies, I don't know that we're doing this for psychology right now, but that provide like telepsychology. The same thing is true with speech services, a lot of these services. So there's a spectrum of services. A future discussion that we might want to have would be, we could have special education folks come in and we could talk about how we meet some of those staffing needs, because that is a common one. But basically it's a range, and that's how.
I just a quick, I have questions for the end, but I just want a quick clarifying question. Speech and hearing teacher, is that the same as an SLP and we just call it a speech and hearing teacher, speech language pathologist?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, but we just call it that because it's such a confusing term, or?
I think that's just how it's coded in our system.
Yeah, we actually
And-
refer to speech language pathologist. Yeah, it's the way it is in
The same
normal
thing,
cases.
okay,
Yeah.
so it's not like we have speech and hearing teachers, it's
Yeah.
actually just an SLP.
Right, yeah. Similarly, like library media specialists, also librarians, like there's just different, yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll say mine for the end.
Well, that's our next thing. We were gonna go into the recruitment and the
Before-
challenges, so we could, if you have questions
Yeah.
about that, we can, now would be the time.
I think, why don't we do some questions on this first part? You have them.
So you said like students always have a teacher, good. Can you speak to what do you track data around long-term substitutes? Like when you say everyone has a teacher, is that like full-time personnel, or are some of those?
Yeah, so
long-term
there are long-term substitutes, and they are actually also under the ITA staff. A portion of those are also, which are considered long-term subs, working towards certification, and will have certification by the end of the school year.
But in terms of, so there's a couple classifications for subs, right? There's daily subs, right? I'm sick, someone comes in. Then we have extended assignment subs. I'm really sick and I get a medical note, I'm going to be out for 3 weeks, right? We're gonna bring someone in as an extended assignment sub, and that sub is going to take on the grade book, take on some lesson planning. It's like it's not just a one-off, right? And then if that extended assignment goes over 90 days, they become a long-term sub, and then they sort of, that's a different threshold. And all there's contractual language with multiple bargaining units about how all of this works. But if it's over 90 days, it then becomes a member of the ITA teacher, and they take on the role there. And all of those occur for a host of different reasons. I don't think we have any situations where a extended assignment sub is maybe one or two is in for a super long time, but usually are like starting the year with no plan. But usually the extended assignment subs is like, you know, the holdover until a new person is put in place, if there's been a posting or however it might be.
Thank you for teaching me.
Sure.
If there's a long-term slip that's in for like an entire year, in a classroom, does their count down towards tenure evaluations again then, or
Great question. It is dependent upon their certification. So if I'm I was a social studies teacher. So if I'm a social studies long-term sub, right? Meaning they brought me in for a year. That's just a 1 year appointment, and then I'm done. But if I am then brought back as a full-time hire, you get a JURIMA, it's called a JURIMA credit, which then that tenure is truncated by or shortened by a year, that path, because you've already done.
Okay. And is that both for certified and working towards?
Only for certified. If you're working towards certification, you can only start tenure on the day that you become certified in New York State. So even if you're certified in Oklahoma and you're coming here and you have everything you need, if you know, you might have you start teaching, but until you're certified by New York State, you can't start your tenure process. And that's not a us decision. That's under NICE.
Thank you. Any other questions about that first piece? Just the data and goals. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I want to take a little bit of time and sort of talk about the recruitment landscape and the challenges we face. And these are just my notes that I thought we could talk through a little bit. This Trisha will have this in board docs. And there's some articles that I even put in to cite some of these pieces as well, if you want to go back, just for fun. So nationally, there are national and statewide teacher shortages. There's a whole host of articles and pieces of information about that. Those are especially acute, as we saw just moments ago in our slides, in our STEM areas, meaning science, technology, math, and then special education, and then our related service roles, speech, psychology. So those are the areas that are, you know, there's shortages everywhere. And the two things we're seeing is that there's fewer certified candidates that are matriculating into preparation programs, right? So there's just like less folks coming into the pipeline. And then at the same time, teacher turnover and retirements peaked right through the pandemic. We have not reached nationwide. I think we were hitting about 10% turnover nationwide in 2022-23, sort of right at the end of the pandemic area. And then now we've dipped back down to closer to the norms, but we're still above the norm by about 1%. So it's nationwide, I think it's 6% is the norm in the documents I was looking at. And we're still nationwide at about 7%. So that's the reason I say that is we're in a landscape where when I was a teacher first applying to jobs in 2005 or whatever, as social studies certified, districts were getting 200 candidates for one posting. For similar postings now, we're probably advertised the same, sent out in the same similar pathways. We're seeing probably one. The social studies, we might get 10 to 15 candidates. And then for these other areas, we're getting, it's much harder. So there's just a shortage overall. Then that doesn't mean we can't do things, but that's like one of the big things that's out there to start. Other things to consider when we're recruiting. I love Ithaca. I grew up in the region, left, came back. But it's geographically isolated. It's not mean that like we're not connected to the world, but there's not like a pocket of people other than in our community. If you go 20 miles outside of our community, there's not another community with another 100,000 people in their county or whatever that we can draw from. So we are limited in that. And then if folks are going to either commute or relocate, there's challenges with that as well. So that's something that as we think about recruitment and retention, we have to think about that. Also, we talked about turnover, but there's also just retirements with more folks, less folks entering programs. We also have folks leaving. So that's a challenge. And then ultimately what this means is in our region, we're competing with resources in what we call like the supply constrained market with our other regional schools. School districts are some of the largest employers in every town in New York State, right? So if you talk to any of our vendor partners that we work with, like in technology or things like that, they know all the schools because every single town or locality has a school, and they all need English teachers and math teachers and special education teachers and speech and psychology and all the different pieces. So we are fighting over the same candidates. And then the last piece is that though we are seeing a bit of a softening in our applicant, or some changes in our applicant pools, but external labor markets are a draw. We lose. I'll share. Like my wife was a teacher and she now works for a college, right? So and she works for a STEM technology division, right? Like so we lose certified folks to private industry, and then being in a college town to those colleges as well. So those are like the big pieces that I see as, and we're going to talk a little bit more about strategies and how we dive into it. But those are the things I see as like the some of the landscapes that's sort of very sort of the generic, not generic, but like the just sort of like factual challenges that we are faced with. But before I go on, are there questions about that? Or there's also could be some pieces that I missed as well. But that's kind of how I thought about it.
I'm curious, Zach, with the last one in particular, with things changing with Cornell and IC, and like it feels like it could be either or both and because they're less hiring. Are we having more opportunity to hire teachers, but there's less people moving here? Does it even out because they're not recruiting either?
We should invest in a magic ball and figure that out. But more seriously, I can say we're seeing in our EA roles, meaning like custodial, transportation, clerical staff, we're seeing, I'd say, a shift in our candidate pool. A lot more folks applying to library clerk jobs, administrative assistant jobs, like those. So, and a lot of those folks do have, again, anecdotally, connections to our university partners in our community. So what we have seen is, I'd say, there are some like labor opportunity pieces there where we are getting candidates. I don't know that we'll see the impact on teaching candidates in quite the same way because of the certification pathways and how that, it's a much bigger challenge to go say, all right, I'm going to go get certified in physics. Even if you have a doctorate in physics, it's not always like a slam dunk to get certified. And when we talk about potential solutions, there's probably some advocacy to do at a state level about transitional pathways and different opportunities to get folks. But that we have seen that. I would say in the science side, we have had more interest from folks who have inquired to us like, hey, how would I get certified if I wanted to teach biology or whatever it might be. So potential is there for sure.
Yeah, every year I would say we get a few people who are interested in pursuing the transitional GD certificate, which is if you have taught higher ed, I believe it's a couple years at a specific capacity, then you can qualify, and NICET has specific requirements, but you can qualify to be certified in that area. So I would say every year we have a few people that are like, no, I'm interested in coming to the school district to teach in this capacity instead of as a professor. And that may be impacted with the changes and the hiring freeze. So I've had a few questions this year as well for
And
people.
I think we might have received 1 or 2 candidates this year who are pursuing that transitional path.
Transitional G,
Is there like active engagement that goes on to help people understand what those pathways
Yes.
are?
Yes,
Yeah.
so we pair with our regional certification officer. And she is magical, cause she will walk people through, what they need to do. And we've hired, folks who come from the higher ed and are teaching now.
And sometimes, like this summer, one of the things we'll talk about this in a minute, but like the personal touch can go a long way. So actually just reaching out directly, like, hey, I see you have an active application, but you have not yet applied. If you're interested, I'd be happy to talk about certification, like that type of thing, can go a long way. So, yeah, we absolutely have thought about that. Any other thoughts on those, like the challenges and the landscape of our challenge, what we're talking about here?
I have like a question that relates to this one, but also to because I wanted to ask you when we had the TA, the teachers assistant slide up, and I can't remember how many, there's like 10 vacancies for one and a couple for the other. And so I guess a couple questions just to start with, because I think when we talk about the challenges in our school, and especially with the role that I play with, disability advocacy, I hear so often how important that ESP role is and how critical that is. And when I see that, there's, what was it, like 190 positions, 10 vacancies, but I've also heard, in my parent capacity in the schools, like that, when a ESP calls out, it's hard to have there are no substitutes for them. And oftentimes if there's a teacher that's absent and they have no substitute teacher, an ESP will step up to fill that position. So I ask all this because I keep thinking about how critical the ESP role is, especially in our district. And how, like, when we're talking about incentivizing and recruitment, how important it would be to have like an ESP to teacher pipeline. And I wonder about getting creative with that. And when you think, you have a TA, and what's the pay difference between an ESP and a TA? And if we've ever gotten creative thinking, like, how can we nurture that role to make that role look at something as like a stepping stone? And have we examined how that can really build on our schools entirely?
Really good question. There's a couple of ways that we're trying to get at that. And when I say get at that, it doesn't mean we've done it. It just means there's some pathways to pursue. In our current bargaining agreement with the ESP unit, there's some ways where we can help offset costs to pursue a degree. There's also an agreement with the ESP unit about a pilot program to sort of upskill some of these folks in specific skills, right? So if you have someone who's really good at working with really specific types of students with specific specific areas where they need support and help, we're looking at how to do that.
You mean like ABA training or something?
Yes, exactly.
And so just to follow, just for clarity as we're talking, so if someone were to upscale on that specific skill, would they, like, are you saying that we're paying for them to be certified and that would be upscaling their pay grade?
We have a pilot program where we're working with the union on how we might do that. So that's actually in the development pipeline.
Okay.
At the same time, one of the challenges that exists with that unit particularly is when we create the teacher pipelines, and we want that, is also ESPs are really terrific for a lot of our students. So there's this challenge of like, they're great, let's make them a teacher. Okay, and we want that, and if they want that for their career, everyone wants that, but then we create a hole again. So there's this other piece of how do we, so it's a twofold pieces. We want to develop that pipeline, and I am talking about potential pipeline, that would absolutely be one of them. people that love working with our students, love being in our schools, and want to be teachers and take their career to a new pathway. But we also want to think about, as we do that, what about people that really just like being ESPs, and how do we, support them in a career path there? Because I'm hesitant to say that if you like being an ESP, you have to be a teacher if you want to be, have a viable career. The question really is, what are the ways that we can do both?
Well, I think my concern and the reason I mean, what is the pay? Because it's low, right?
Yeah,
Like,
we just settled with the ESPs last school year.
right.
And I want to say a TA starting probably around $20.50, and I think ESP's $18.50 or so. I would have to pull up those numbers, but so that's your baseline pay. And then there's some other programs and compensation models for degrees, years of experience. So it could change.
But like, is there, and I should, forgive me, because I should
Yeah.
know this, but I can't
Yes.
retain all this information, but like, is there a pay raise scale? So that's,
Yeah.
that's the base. What's the max?
Well, So the max, so that's their starting pay raise scales or pay scale ranges, right?
Right.
But then based on every year, someone's going to get a raise based on the percentage of that unit bargain, right?
Okay.
So you could definitely, there's definitely some ESP staff members who are going to make a range well above that. We could do a breakdown at some point and talk about
Yeah, I just think
Yeah.
I think you can have the most amazing ESP, but if their salary is gonna be capped at $26 an hour.
Yeah.
There's no way you're gonna retain them for a large amount of time. And I guess that's why I would love to have a breakdown until I better
Yeah,
understand that.
Sure.
All right.
All good. So things that we've then talked about with so the question next, and we'll talk about teachers in this part, but because I think that's one of the areas that we've been talking about a lot. Trisha, would you hit that again for us?
Sure.
So the question is like, so who should we recruit? Each one of these, when we think about it, had different philosophies on like how to reach them, right? And these are the things we want to work on specifically. So we identified 5 groups that we tend to recruit from or could recruit from. The number one is our graduates from local colleges and universities, right? That's and oftentimes there's our student teachers. Student teachers are actually the sort of the ideal recruit, because not only are they in our schools, but it's a great opportunity to see how is this person in our environment. Very rarely in our interview process do we get as a robust look at someone's abilities. So that's a great area to start. Another area that we think we need to probably grow and expand on is how do we find and reach out to experienced teachers who are already in our region, in surrounding districts, and maybe are ready. Maybe there's things about Ithaca that are appealing. Maybe they live in our district already, and they think, you know what, there's a school 2 minutes away. Maybe I'd like to work there now. So that's a group that traditionally a lot of folks have find a district, get tenured, settle down, and stay there. The question that I would have as we think about strategies and planning is how might what would our pitch be? How might we reach out and convince teachers in surrounding areas to say, hey, you know what, I'd like to go to Ithaca. And we have some ideas about that, which I talk about in a minute. The other piece, and this was, I know Aaron stepped out, but this could be one, the mid-career changers. I'm not sure syntax wise that's how I should have written it, but that's what it is. Like folks that maybe were working at a college and they have a degree in literature, and all of a sudden they want to become they want to get involved. How might we reach out to those folks? how might we advertise to them specifically? That's something that's worth thinking about, and that's a different type of group. And then we get the relocators. This is actually a bigger than I thought group. We get a good number of people who I think we're doing some interviews this week for people who are like, hey, I want to live in Ithaca Finger Lakes region. We get a decent number of people from New York City who decide to leave the city, come up here, and settle down. So that's a group that's unique. But we also get folks from Florida, Texas, California, like really all over. Some of those are related to Cornell, but some of those are people who just want to come here. And then the last piece of people to recruit as a separate group are that internal pipeline, people who are already working and maybe we want to help them become certified. So when we think about the recruiting as it relates to teaching positions, those would be like the 5 ones that I think about first to fill those needs. There's also some other like subgroups when we're trying to fill needs. For example, a teacher that's dual certified and they're working in a easier to fill area, how can we convince them or approach them or but they're already with us, so I'm thinking about this as stuff.
Something that I think is important for this group to have. Can you just go back to the So one of the things for you all to keep in mind in the work that you do, I'm looking at 3 and 4, the mid-career changers and the relocators, especially out-of-state relocators. We currently, one of the things that you may be able to help with some state level advocacy on is that currently the New York State teacher retirement system, and depending on what tier you are in, we have a large portion of people around my age who are tier 4, who need 30 years of service to be fully vested in the pension system. There are people about 8 to 10 years younger than me who are tier 6 who need 40 years of service to be fully vested in the New York State pension system. And as I think about a mid-career changer or a relocator, that is a huge challenge. Like it's both a challenge to recruitment, and then in terms of how does a school district, especially like a relocator, say they came with 10 years of experience in Florida, but they're starting a 40-year career. How do we pay someone for
well, and also other states accept
and
other states accept credit, like you can buy credit in a retirement system. Like if I went to Massachusetts, I might be able to get up to 10 years of service. Right? New York State doesn't accept credit, so those are, when we go back to our challenges, those are some challenges.
Yeah, so just there is work being done, especially by our union, on bringing down that 40 years back to 30. And it would also be great, like, through NYSBA, if this comes up in your circles, the challenge of the 40 years is a challenge and the lack of reciprocity is a challenge. So any work that you can do with that will help make those two will help us in those 2 areas.
Catherine, this is the fixed tier 6.
This is the fixed tier 6 program. Yeah.
Noted, and we'll follow up.
Thank you.
I was also curious. Just because I know it's been happening around the country and Ithaca is no exception, about like bringing folks back from retirement. I've noticed more and more people seem to be doing that. Do you consider that as a strategy or as a worst case scenario?
I think that's like, I don't know if I consider that like, I guess that'd be like a short, like a year by year strategy. We actually did that like every year we do that. I'm seeing if I can find, for example, this year, actually it's more now. We were at 5 retirees that were working in Central Valley. I think we're at 6 now. I think another one joined us just recently. So yeah, that's definitely cool. And part of the reason that works right now is I believe the state waived the cap, an earnings cap, meaning we can pay folks sometimes like a full salary, but they can also get their retirement. Previously, there was a cap, which meant that you could only earn up to like 30 or 40, 30,000.
35,000.
Yeah. in a school year. So, yeah, so there's all these like, these pieces, but it's, yeah, good question.
I'm also curious, because our local education, I mean, Portland's education program is of course huge. Cornell used to have an education program. Do you know if they're ever gonna revisit that?
I mean, I don't think they have it anymore, but I don't,
I know, yeah,
Yeah.
they used to, but
yeah, so I don't know.
I see those.
Yeah, that's good college test.
I'm just thinking about the quantity of people who end up
I
getting
mean,
certified.
I think the challenge is, as we've said already, is there's less folks matriculating into those programs. So when we talk about a revival of a program, I think we'd have to see large scale shifts in the number of people entering. That's a challenge.
I also know like nationwide, you're also seeing more residency programs or like district certified programs. Is that a thing in New York or elsewhere?
I don't think
Syracuse did do residency programs, which
With SU.
Aren't they
With
partnered with
SU,
SU?
yes.
Yeah.
yes. And I'm not sure. I believe there's also there's another school district. I'm blanking on it that also did a partnership with a nearby college. And I've had several conversations with like a college in SUNY Cortland to see one, how can we nurture that pipeline of our ESPs, and then residencies. What does that look like? How can we feasibly make it happen? And so that's one of the conversations. Actually, on our next slide, one of the things to think about is those partnerships and pipelines. And just backing up a little, with recruitment, in the, years that I've been recruiting, I think there's one thing that hasn't changed is that those that are going into teaching are going into teaching because they want to impact children. They love it. They come with a passion. What has changed is that it is a candidate market, right? They're looking for where's the best place for me to teach. I know that, I'm wanted by all of these people. What are you offering? What's professional development beyond what's required? And what's my life gonna look like? What's my life balance gonna look like? And so that's where we have to be visible and say Ithaca City School District is the best place to teach, and here's why. It's one of the favorite parts of my job is to talk to people about the work that we're doing, why they should come here. If you're trying to leave New York City, okay, here's what we have to offer. If you're relocating with a partner or spouse, how can we connect? If you got your foot in the door as a ESP, but your dream is a teacher, okay, how can we get you there and not make it that you're broke and and then have to leave us completely to just leave education, because we have seen that. So we've had so many conversations on how to really make this work. And some of it comes to like, where's the money? How can we offer it? And then others are getting the word out and our visibility. We're visible, and I drive everywhere to go to recruitment fairs, but also our online presence. So recently, and I'll show a little, I'm kind of excited about this rough draft of a testimonial video. How do I?
Can you just click on it?
Yeah.
We've been working on some recruitment material.
Yes.
The rough draft.
So having people here, like, why do people work here, right? Why do you want to teach here? Oh, we gotta turn on the speaker. That should have the little.
Well, no, it's the volume on
Down at the bottom.
on the bottom, right? Oh, Matt.
See,
Let me see. It have the speaker. Okay. First grade.
Ithaca is the school that I worked in, BJM. One is where
part of, part of, part of, part of some of the things to do to have more visibility and let people know, okay, who's Ithaca City School District.
I love that idea, and I think that it was a really nice video. I think that ICSD is such a unique district. I mean, I, as a parent, moved here from DC. Neither of us even work in the state of New York, and we moved here solely for this district. Because there's some really unique things about the district that you can't find in many other places. And I think that for a lot of teachers, I would assume that it is those pieces that are such a draw. And which is why the question for me keeps coming up, and I have written down, what's the pitch? Because that video to me, while like really nice, seemed like it was like kind of to like, you should be a teacher, like you should work in a school, like it's nice to be around kids, it's nice to, you know, have an impact. But it didn't say anything to me about the things that make like this district itself really unique and different from other districts. And that's what I'm so like eager to see as like an opportunity for folks to really like understand that. It will push some people away, and that's probably a good thing. And it will also bring folks who would, you know, teaching here would not be like teaching in any of the districts around here and at most other schools. And so I'm really curious, like how that can like come about, how even with the, like, I would want everybody at IC who's like teaching the teacher prep program or at Portland to be able to voice that uniqueness. Like it makes me think about like what opportunities are there for collaboration with ITA. Like I think about, you know, what an amazing opportunity it was to have, you know, the negotiations publicized. And it also was like a time period where there was a lot of time spent talking, kind of hearing like negative aspects about this district and about teaching in this district. And now that hopefully soon that will be behind us, I wonder if there's like a newfound opportunity for kind of collaboration with the teachers here who can also speak really well to what makes it so unique to be here and why, you know, most of them are not going to the surrounding districts. So I'm excited about you guys thinking about these kinds of things. And I just think it's like so important that we emphasize the things that really are so incredible about the district.
I was gonna say, I love this as well. So coming from, at least in part of my career, the charter school world, we are great at branding, right? Because charter schools are trying to take kids from neighborhood schools. And so I think like one thing that I think is like the profile of an educator in the Ithaca School District is not necessarily monolithic, right? And so I think like the emphasis on one school is maybe one thing I would consider. And also like the emphasis on interviews with two like types of personnel, instructional and bus driver. Because I think about like, you know, a lot of our schools, like we have elementary, middles and high school. We have like ACS, which is its own special thing. We have a lot of like student performances and celebrations, like, you know, like images from like a play or a sports. I just like my overall thing would be, I love the fact that we're thinking about online presence and testimonial. And I think that there's a lot of things we can showcase in Ithaca that with this, I have a relatively one-sided view of Ithaca. I guess would just be my.
Oh, yeah. And this is just a rough draft. This is,
Yeah.
so I'm partnering with our video photographer. And this was like, hey, let's put something together to give an idea. And I'm glad I appreciate your feedback, because this is something that is in works to get that voice. I appreciated yesterday Beverly Tan, one of the teachers, you know, was really grateful for the micro credential. And that's a lot of things where that sets us apart when we talk to candidates, the teachers that are looking for that right first teaching placement for them. What am I getting out of this? What is the Ithaca City School District's commitment, right? And so, yeah, definitely hearing it in a video, right? Really adds to the branding and the marketing of who we are, yes.
Yeah,
share a few examples with you.
Yeah, please do.
So, as a former TV news producer, if you ever want an eye on that before you
Yeah.
finish, I'm happy to help, because I'm like visually editing it in my head as I'm watching it, like, I'm like, oh, that could have been cut, this could have been good, I loved it, but anyway.
Yeah,
But my question is, listen, money talks. So I know that the negotiations aren't final, but you know, so much of what we heard in the negotiations is we don't get paid enough. And one of your slides, you know, said, you know, we lose teachers to other districts. So, you know, say crystal ball, do you think that if the agreement is reached and if the board were to say yes, right, do you think that will help with recruitment efforts?
I mean, I don't think I would have put that as a group to recruit if I didn't think that. So
Yeah, right.
my answer is yeah, of course, right? I think that's like ultimately, if we're thinking about, I mean, this is the tricky part of the economics of our region, our state, the economy is, you know, we have to position ourselves to get, you know, the workforce we want. And part of our, it's kind of all merges in this conversation because there's this question of, like, I like what you're saying with like, what's our tagline? What's our pitch, right? Because we need to be able to pitch, then we need to be able to like close the deal, right? And then we need to be able to, you know, sustain the deal, right? Retain. And retaining our existing staff is a whole nother conversation that also requires very similar thoughts. And we should probably present at the next meeting about some of those thoughts. But yeah, I think it all goes hand in hand. And then also from the board, and this is the last part, and we could probably jump there in a minute, but it's like, what are those things, like what would be, you know, both policies and, you know, areas where we can kind of spark those approaches? What are pitches and competencies that we want to give and competencies we want to see in our candidates, right? How are we going to pair that with our recruitment efforts? All of that lives within this conversation.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. That's correct. No, I was thinking, I mean, there might be different pitches also for different places. Like I
Yeah.
kept thinking a lot about like Binghamton and Cortland are just two schools that produce an enormous number of teachers that are very close.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like if you're a Binghamton student and you're graduating and you have a degree in teaching, and like you don't want to go back to New York City for whatever reason,
Yeah.
maybe because 50% of Binghamton comes from
Yeah.
downstate. It's sort of like how, you know, what's the message there versus like what's the message in different places. So I guess I was just thinking about, you know, finding out like from these different places, like, hey, you have a lot of Binghamton students, you know, what are they looking for? What do they want to see?
That's a great point. And then I'd also say it also depends on the position we're recruiting, right? Like if we're recruiting a science teacher, and we have these conversations, the science standards in New York State are changing, right? And so if you're a teacher in a district where you're the only earth science teacher in your district and you need to figure that out basically on your own, a pitch here essentially could be, hey, we have a team that's working on this and we're going to spend 3 PD days with a team of people working on that so we can do it together. For a lot of people, that can be really appealing, particularly when you know, we're looking at a lot of changes. So there's, I think, to expand on your point, I think what I'm sort of saying that we need to pivot into as we think about recruiting, and this is where we need to grow, is not just blanket recruiting, but like, who are our groups? Identify those 5. What are our subgroups? What are our positions? What are the pitches that to match those pieces up? And I think the criticism, the very clear criticism that I would give myself, and I would hear from anyone, is that the sort of one size fits all recruiting maybe is not going to get us the results that we want. So the questions here are, from this meeting and all the conversation we had thereafter, are like, all right, how are we going to combat that?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that like things like the marketing efforts can serve 2 purposes, right? One is like the sort of video we described with like kid performances and fun stuff, but is that something that then parents share and staff share because we love kids and we're passionate about kids? I think that just builds general positive buzz, especially in the absence of local media that really focuses on like cool things that teachers and kids are doing. And then there's the more targeted efforts a question I had and one thing that I don't see on here, but I do think it matters, both from personal experience, like from what I've observed, is like, are the process and how difficult or not difficult it is for people to apply.
Yeah,
And so I'm not sure if you're.
maybe I'll just jump because I'm weird. So it's just we refreshed it. It says areas where we can grow. So we want to optimize the ICSD applicant pool, which I think is exactly what you're saying or close to what you're saying, right? Like, so fast track the hiring when possible. That includes applications. We need to post our vacancies much earlier. I was in a conversation today with the principal. We have a retirement in math in one of our buildings for the spring. Let's post it January 1, right? As anticipated. We just gave an offer to a technology education candidate who's graduating this school year for next year, right? So along those lines, I'm sorry I cut you off because I'm so excited about it, but those are the things that we're trying to do. That we're trying to do.
I think so one thing I can, so I'm speaking for this as someone who's applied for a lot of jobs and like been involved in a lot of talent processes. And my experience with the state school district some years ago is I just think a little bit about like service level agreements for the process, as in what is the maximum amount of time from the time someone applies to when they hear from someone, right? Year wide, including when people take vacations over the summer, because I know that's a perpetual issue in a lot of districts. What are the requirements for applying? Like, do we have things like, at this point, especially with AI, I would name like unnecessary essays or like other requirements that like might make someone go, oh, like, I don't want to, like, if we're not getting that, because like things like that are very helpful when you have 200 applicants, because it allows you to weed down to a number. But if you actually only have like 15 candidates, extra requirements at the front end prevent you from getting applicants in. And so I guess I would be curious, maybe in a future committee meeting, to explore like what is our process and how can we make it, for lack of a better term, as simple as possible while getting a I think you did, and this is a quote, quoting you, Zach, a robust understanding of people's abilities.
Yeah, I mean, that is the intent, and we talked about this a bit last year too.
Yeah, the marketing and videos, that's to serve, like, to have somebody click on Ithaca City School District.
Exactly.
Then it comes to, like, I had this little image here. This is to the right is Niagara Falls Teacher Recruitment Day. There are hundreds of districts, school districts. There's people from Texas, California, all over, right? And this, I took a picture of East Aurora's world famous 15-second job application. And it's like, okay, if that's what people want, 15 seconds, they applied, and
We're gonna do 5
and
That's right. We're jumping in.
yes, how can we do that, right? Because I can sell them Ithaca, but if we take too long to get back to them, they've moved on. So, that is the.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, in the interest of time, I just want to make sure that we wrap up and.
Can I have one more question
Yeah.
about this? So I'm just thinking here with everything that you shared, something that just blares in my mind, like when Emily said, I moved here from DC. And I think like, part of why I was excited to leave the DC area was leaving a city. And then I think, and leaving the traffic and leaving the chaos. And when I think about where we're recruiting from, even when you're talking about Binghamton, like why would someone want to leave Binghamton to come to Ithaca when the cost of living is higher, yada, yada, yada. And so I say all this because I wonder if we've explored, and being a communications person, if we've explored marketing, using methods to do targeted marketing to teachers on, like, say, Facebook, right? And doing it in New York City and drawing people from places where it'd be like, oh my God, I could get the heck out of here and go somewhere like that for a while.
Yeah, no, that's been an internal conversation. The ability to do, like, allow me this one joke, but I remember one time I was looking up a recipe for artichokes, and then the big artichoke found it, and then I got the artichoke ads everywhere, right? So we know we can do targeted marketing for artichokes. So I'm sorry, but
that was great.
but why not So why not for teachers, right?
Right.
So like, and that exists, and so we've had internal conversations about how would we do that and who are the partners that we could find to target exactly those people. So yeah, that is something that we'd like to do, sure.
Yeah, man, social media, use it for good.
Sorry about that.
I like it. I'm gonna use the artichoke.
Okay, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We only had an hour today. It seems like you guys set a really good foundation for helping us kind of understand what's happening now and what the needs are. I can tell even from just the questions that we all have lots of ideas. I have like a list of 15 questions that I'm not even able to ask you guys right now. I think it would be, and this is why Zach and I decided to put the board goals piece down at the bottom, is because as we're finding with everything, there are like a million things we would love to see or help you all do, or that you would like to do, and a million different priorities we would all like to put at the very top and can't. And so as folks saw yesterday, we kind of talked about, strategic planning and goal setting for the entire board. And I think that the same interest goes for, and I know that you asked me directly about what those goals were, because it will help us nail them down. So I think that this committee working together to kind of talk about what stood out for us and where the opportunities seem to be, and then collaborating with the rest of our colleagues to make sure that whatever goals we decide to set as a board, and working with Dr. Brown on district goals, are aligned very much with this. Zach, I know that you said that like in the past there have been recruitment efforts have been really like aligned with the type of candidate or the need that the district had expressed, especially as it related to goals and priorities. So this is a great time and opportunity to do that same thing. We can't help you focus on everything. So thank you for setting the stage for us. I think that we'll have some good opportunities to be able to talk about it as a board, and then come back to maybe be able to jointly set a few priorities that we may be able to help you and support you through working on the rest of the year.
Yeah, and in the slideshow there, I also gave some questions along those lines of what the board, things I was wondering, so I think we can continue.
And this slide deck's on board docs, so it will be.
Yeah, it is, yeah, or it should be, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, meeting adjourned.
That's the agenda.